Okay. Hey, there we go. Good afternoon. My name is Ben, and I'm a senior here. A few years ago, I had a conversation with Dr. Cormier in which she said, I think you always have to be asking yourself as president, are you doing the best job that you can in providing the best opportunity here for students, staff, and faculty? That means constantly evaluating what you're doing, not being afraid of criticism, and not being afraid of finding out something you can do better. In your honest evaluation of Longwood, what are some things Longwood could be doing better, and if you become president, how might you seek to improve in those areas?
Thanks, Ben. I think Longwood does very well. Let me tell you a story. When this was announced that I was a finalist, and of course it went on the internet, so it went viral and everybody knew. My friends and colleagues said to me, where's Longwood? What's Longwood? And I understand there's a t-shirt I can get that But then the second thing that had happened is most of those friends and colleagues went on the internet, went on the website, and looked up Longwood and read about it and found out about it. And almost invariably, they would come back to me and say, that's a great school. Why don't I know about Longwood? And so I think that's something that Longwood doesn't do well, has not done well, is distinguish themselves among a lot of great schools in Virginia as to why this is a place that students should come, why this is a place you should come to get your education. Everyone who comes here, 124 applicants for the position of president, they know what's here, but somehow that word hasn't gotten out. And that should be one of the responsibilities of everyone in this room, but certainly the responsibility of the president.
Hey, I'm Rhonda Brock-Survey, and I chair English and Modern Languages. I want to ask you about the people who work with our students. I supervise about 50 people, and of those 50 people, 38% are either not tenure-track full-time workers or part-time workers. And I'm wondering if you can speak about your opinion of this, using this sort of worker in our educational process.
Sure, Rhonda. Part of that issue, I'm sure, is budget related. And that's just reality of higher education today. Part of it, I hope, is getting people who may have some practical experience to be adjunct professors. I take it that's what you're talking about to some extent. So part of that is adjunct professors who may bring some experience outside the classroom that helps enhance the educational experience overall. I'm not sure where we go with this, but I think that the near-term future is that there are going to be, of necessity, until this budget situation is resolved, a high percentage, probably too high, 38% is too high, of people who are part-time, not tenure-track employees. It's not unique to Longwood. You can find other schools that are experiencing the same thing and having the same angst about it. We have to work together on those issues that will resolve it. There isn't an easy answer to it. It's not an ideal situation, but we're not in an ideal budget situation right now.
Okay. I'm Audrey Church, and I teach in the Department of Education. I wonder if you would speak a bit about graduate education and how you feel graduate education fits into Longwood's mission.
Sure, Audrey. I haven't had a lot of experience with graduate education, although I taught law at the graduate level at an ABA accredited program. So I've taught at that level. How does it fit into this mission? Well, one of the things I think it does is it enhances Longwood's visibility, potentially. And I talked about and mentioned that we need to increase the visibility outside of this small community in Virginia and other places. So it also helps develop citizen leaders. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, the key to the realm was a bachelor's degree. Increasingly, that's not enough. It's a master's degree. And so adding and continuing graduate education at this university enhances the mission because it's going to help create citizen leaders who have a greater depth of knowledge in some areas, a better perspective, a better way of thinking about things, and I would hope that it would also make Longwood more visible in the larger academic community and elsewhere.
Good afternoon. My name is Kat Tracy, and I'm an assistant professor in the Department of English and Modern Languages.
I missed your first name?
Kat.
Kat, okay.
You mentioned, of course, budget constraints and things that, of course, have to be dealt with in terms of tight budgets. You also mentioned the allure of Longwood with small class sizes and a nice community feel for students and faculty. How do you propose to keep that small community and small class sizes considering the current budget crisis and budget situation?
Well, I think we can keep the small class sizes. They may have to increase some, but I wouldn't envision 150-person classrooms where we do that and we lose that special connection that you have in a small classroom. The budget crisis, and I think it's fair to call it a budget crisis, is not going to get a lot better in the near term. In fact, it may get worse. And we have to work together, the people in this room and people on the board and others, about how we're going to do that. I think the problem here is that you don't want to do a short-term solution that damages what the long-term goals and aspirations of Longwood are. And so there are some proposals, I'm sure, about let's cut this, let's cut that. We don't want to do that because in time, this too shall pass, and we'll be on firmer footing. We have to figure out how to do that. I think the thing you need to protect are the core values that Longwood has. And the core thing, one of those core things, is the small class and the community feel. I don't know enough about the exact numbers of budget to tell you what's going to happen, but that's one of the things that I would not want to sacrifice. I think that that's one that we need to hold on to as hard as we can.
Good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. My name is Mary Carol Hackett. I'm an associate professor in the Department of English and Modern Languages. I also direct creative writing here at Longwood. And as part of a liberal arts education, we take the arts part pretty seriously. We have a thriving, engaged community of artists on this campus, ranging from creative writing to music to theater. Who'd I miss? Art.
Music?
Music? Yeah, I said music, creative
Okay.
writing, theater, music, and art. And our students are equally engaged. However, a lot of times in the situation like we're in with the budget crisis, the arts are often the first thing that gets cut. So we're asking then, what would you do tangibly in support of the arts community on this campus?
I'm not sure I can answer tangibly what I'm going to do in support of the arts community. I'll tell you this. My wife and I are supporters of the arts as well. We visit art galleries. We go to Shakespeare plays. We believe in the great value that that has in a liberal arts education as well. And in fact, here at Longwood, it's particularly important because the Longwood Center for the Visual Arts, for example, is one of the great outreaches that this university has to the community. We need to take a look holistically at the entire budget process. And I can't stand up here and say, I'm going to protect the arts. Because in that way, we're starting to say, this is more important than that. And I'm not prepared to do that. I'm certainly not going to do it by myself. The people in this room and those you represent have to help make those decisions. I've talked to a number of groups today, and one of the things that I've said, and I hope it's somewhat in response to your question, is that what I would fear for this school is that in this budget crisis, in these tough times, we lose the sense of community that we have because there's pressure on people. People are agitated and nervous about what may happen. And sometimes when that happens, you have finger pointing about why don't you cut that program? Or why do we need that program? And instead of coming together as a community and working together to figure out these issues, we create fractures fissures between people, and we lose the sense of community that makes Longwood what it is. I support the arts. I'll do whatever I can as the president to continue to support the arts, but I can't stand here and tell you, in fairness, that I will protect the arts against everything, because that may not be possible. We have to look at what's best for the entire institution. But I agree with the first thing you said, and that is it shouldn't be the first thing on the chopping block.
Okay, I'm going to go because I have the microphone. And I'm going to totally butcher this, and I apologize for that. I'm Oni McKenzie from
Right,
Student
Oni.
Affairs. I couldn't help but notice in the letter, the passage you read, there was a statement of gratitude for life given by God.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there was a personal connection for me with that because that's a shared value. I also heard lots of expressions of integrity, honesty, patriotism, a lot of strong value statements. We might share that in common, but I know that there are lots of people within our room, or this room, and a lot of our students who don't feel that strongly. So can you talk to me, how do you make a connection with people who don't share the same vision or the background or the perspective that they might assume you bring to the table? Does that make sense?
In a way, Oni, are you talking about God, or are you talking
well,
about...
God, the military, some of the practices, connection and community seems to be important to you.
Right.
How are you going to bridge gaps and make immediate connections with people who don't share the same values that you've expressed?
Okay. Well, first let me talk about God. I read it, or I quoted that letter because that's what Justice Powell wrote. Joan and I are religious. We go to church. But we respect anyone's beliefs. So if someone doesn't particularly believe in God or in the same God that we do, that's not a problem, and it shouldn't be a problem. I mean, that's the plurality and diversity that this country is based on. Now, when I talk about patriotism, I mean love of country. That's all I mean. I don't mean that you have to support particular current policies. In fact, in some cases, it's patriotic not to. There are policies of several administrations that I have not supported. So I'm not talking about everyone line up and do what our leaders are telling us to do. I'm talking about understanding and appreciating what this country is about and the opportunities it provides to disagree about those things. And so I would say not just on patriotism, but on the other things you talked about. If you disagree, that's part of what I'm talking about. You have the right to disagree. You have the right to discuss it. That's what has made our country strong. That's why we have a First Amendment, that you can say things that might be outrageous or might put you in prison in another country, but it doesn't happen here. I would certainly engage in talking to anyone about those values. I will say that to me, there's one kind of no-fail value, and that's integrity. I mean, I can't imagine how you can have a fulfilling life or the right kind of life if you're not a person of integrity. So I guess someone could disagree with that, and I'll listen to them, but I will never be persuaded that being a person of integrity is not the right way to live your life. Being a person who can be trusted and whose word can be trusted at all times. When you say something, you mean it and you're going to do it.
Do you celebrate those different viewpoints when we do our holiday tradition? Will there be other holiday traditions valued as well, or is it, do you understand?
I'm not sure I understand where you're going with that one. What holiday traditions are we talking about? I believe in the Easter Bunny.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for being here today, sir. My name is Brian Bates. I'm the chair of the Department of Sociology, Anthropology, and Criminal Justice Studies. I'm also a Longwood graduate, class of '92. I think you'll find around this room and around this campus that there are a number of people who work here who were students here at some point in their life. Mm-hmm. Can you please explain to us, if you're hired as our president, what will your first 180 days look like, your first 6 months look like? You're going to be inheriting a budget that you've had nothing to do with, that's been crafted in a very difficult budgetary situation. Could you please explain your process for dealing with that and your process for developing your administration?
Sure, Brian. Well, one of the things that's very fortunate for whoever the next president of Longwood is, I hope it's me, is that they're following Dr. Cormier. And we had a chance to meet with her last night and even talked about some budget issues for the future budget and talked about a potential transition plan for a new president coming in. So I'd certainly rely on her, and I know she's going to continue to be around to help guide me through that, and I would rely on other people in this room as well. I think one of the essential things to do in that first 180 days, as I said, I've told you, I have a connection with Virginia. I'm familiar with this Commonwealth. I have many friends who live here, family members who live here, and my own experience is that political decisions in Virginia are made based on personal relationships. It's probably true in most states and commonwealths. I think it's nowhere more true than it is here in Virginia. And so one of the things that the new president has to focus on right away is going to meet the key legislators and influencers and decision makers, not when the legislature is in session, but before that, to get to know them on a personal level, to get them to know you, to be able to talk to them, to when a crisis comes up or when something you need right away, that's not the first time you're talking to that person and they can associate a face with a name. So that is part of, a major part of, I think, the beginning of the next administration. It has to be making that connection with the people in the political positions in Virginia who are going to have an impact on this institution. I think one thing that any president has to do is find the balance between external and internal. For at least the first little while, I think that balance probably has to be struck in the external direction because of the situation that we're in right now. But you can't, and I won't, neglect the internal. So I would be talking to all the students here. I'd be talking to the faculty. I believe in complete transparency in every way. There aren't going to be any secrets because if you're not transparent, if you don't do things in the open, particularly in tough times, then people become suspicious and rumors start and they ascribe evil motives to you when there may not be some. And so you have to be open. And so talk to the legislators, figure out where we're going with the budget, where we're going here at the university. I would need to talk to the students, talk to the faculty to introduce myself and my thoughts and ideas about where the university ought to be going, and go to sports events.
Hi.
The microphone is now working.
My name's Anna Rigg. I'm a freshman here, and as you may know, Greek life is a very strong tradition here at Longwood, and I just want to know how you propose to work with the Greek community if you're selected as the president.
I don't have a lot of experience with Greek life. My experience is through my daughter and son-in-law, who were a sorority member and a fraternity member. And when my daughter was thinking about joining a sorority, my wife and I were a little concerned. Said, I'm not sure about that. But it turned out for them to be a great experience. It's a community within a community. And although I don't have a lot of experience about it, I know some about Greek life here at Longwood. And I know what a tradition it is. In fact, I think it's integral to this institution. It is a great part of it. And some of the folks told me that the reason that the Longwood won basketball game last week was it was Greek night at the basketball game. And so they had everyone out there. And so you have this sense that you come together. Now, there are problems with Greek life everywhere. We'd have to make sure that we don't have hazing issues or other things like that. But what the best part of Greek life is that they are engaged in, and I hope they would be engaged in, philanthropy and in service projects. And that's what my daughter and her fiance at the time and later husband found with the fraternity and sorority that they were in. Was it, again, I think it fits with the citizen leader model because it is a way to engage with others on that small group, to be involved in community activities. And so I would be pleased to be very engaged with Greek life and find out more about how it functions here at Longwood.
Hi, thank you for being here. I'm Bill Stewart. I'm a faculty member in communication studies. You alluded in your opening remarks to some perceptions about how you'd make the transition from a thoroughly military life to one that is thoroughly civilian. Now, I know in your current faculty, you have faculty members who are military and some are civilian. How would those experiences help you navigate the transition to a thoroughly unmilitary organization?
I don't know. I saw two guys running with Army T-shirts on today, and I see two back here with ACUs. So I'm not sure it's thoroughly unmilitary, maybe mostly unmilitary. But I've taken one very significant transition step already. I bought several suits. You're right. I've had a military career, and I grew up in a military family. But I'll tell you that not only for the last 12 years, but for the last 20 years plus, I've dealt with civilians all the time. I deal with civilians. I deal with members of Congress. I deal with their staff. I deal with our Board of Visitors, which is all civilian. I deal with civilian faculty whom we have. And it's not just at West Point, but in other when I was in some of the jobs I've had in the Army, I worked closely with the Department of State and the FBI and local and state agencies. So, I'm going to change those ACUs for a suit like this, but really the bottom line is it's working with people. That's what it is. And that's what I enjoy doing, to find the talents that individual people have and help them use them to the best of their abilities. I don't think there's a great difference in that between military and civilian life. I hope not.
Hi, I'm Megan. I'm a fifth-year senior, and you've discussed your love for citizen leadership, but I want to know what actual attributes and characteristics you possess that make you the best citizen leader for this job.
That's pretty tough. There's a philosophy of leadership. I'm not a great philosopher. There's a philosophy of leadership called servant leadership. I got some applause on that. And if I subscribe to a philosophy, that's what it is. I try to be a servant leader, and I think that's what citizen leaders are. It's people who care. You care more about the people who work for you and what their goals and aspirations are than for yourself. You care about a greater good and doing the right thing at all times, even if it might not be exactly the right thing for you. That's how I've tried to live my life. And as a leader, I really value the people whom I work with and what their hopes are, and try to help them make the best of themselves. And that's what a citizen leader does, is to contribute to the greater good of the community, to not worry as much about how much money you're making, but how much you're serving others and helping other people. And that really is how I've lived my life.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Ownby. I'm a creative writing student here, and I'm a senior. And since I've been here, we as creative writers have been one of the most active groups on campus, demonstrating for free speech awareness, domestic violence awareness, and even against the proposed smoking ban a couple years ago. I just wonder...
Against the proposed what?
Smoking ban.
Okay.
And I was just wondering, as president, how open would you be to student activism, and how important is student activism to you?
I think it's important. I think it's absolutely, I'd be open to it. I think it's got to be done in the proper way so that I'm sure there are policies and procedures about how you do it and that you're not disruptive to others. But that's part of, I hope that's what part of being a student is expressing your views. It's part of what education is about. What's antithetical to education and intellectual development is groupthink. You can't have people all thinking the same. If you don't have people who disagree and argue with you, then you're never going to test your assumptions. You're never going to figure out if you're right. You're never going to question yourself. So student protest is a great tradition in this country, and I'd be absolutely in favor of it, although I'm in favor of the no smoking ban.
Hello, my name is Sharon Sercom, and I'm an administrative assistant in academic affairs. I read your resume with great interest and noticed quite a number of publications and lectures on torture.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I'll try to not be painful. I look around the room and I see many students, and certainly lots of faculty and administrators. There's a fourth group that's very rarely mentioned, and that's staff. There are members, you may not know, staff members who have been at Longwood for 35, 40 plus years. It's a very loyal group. We have a very active staff advisory committee, whom I believe you met with earlier today. And I would like to hear how you would support staff efforts on this campus and how you do that now in your current job.
So you're not going to ask me a question about torture?
No, I was just trying to make you nervous.
Okay. I'd rather answer a question about torture. I think if you ask the people who work with me over the years, one word that they would use to describe me as a leader and a co-worker is inclusive. I ask people all the time what's going on with them and what they think about things. I do it both formally and informally. At West Point, for example, I meet informally once or twice a semester. I just announce that I'm having lunch at a certain location at a certain time, and the first 35 people who sign up, because it's a smaller room, can come to lunch. And that's faculty, that's staff, that's whoever wants to come. And I have no agendas at those meetings. I come with no notes. I come to listen. And I would intend certainly to do something like that here. Also, I think I'd meet regularly, formally, with the staff advisory group. And I know there's some consternation, and probably should be, about what's going to happen with the staff. Because we talked about it in the arts area, but it's also, I'm sure, out there in the staff. Okay, this is an academic institution, therefore we've got to preserve faculty in the academic program at all costs, and the place to cut is the staff. And to me, that's short-sighted, because if you don't have the proper staff and the right people who are committed to what this school is about, then the faculty members aren't going to be able to do their job either, and they're not going to be able to help the students. So I would absolutely not only listen to the staff, but I would seek their input and learn what their issues are and talk to them about those issues and try to resolve them all together.
My name is Hunter. I'm a junior. My question is, every person has an idea of progress. What is something that you implemented at West Point that you consider progress, so we can see exactly where you're coming from?
Okay. In 2001, we sent 4 cadets abroad for a semester, 2 to Spain and 2 to France. This year, we're sending 150 cadets abroad to 17 different countries: China, Russia, Egypt, Jordan, all over the world. In 2001, 2002, we sent about 125 cadets overseas on internships during the summer, and about a like number on internships within the United States. Last summer, we sent 560 cadets abroad for an internship, and again, about 600 cadets for internships across the United States. We did that largely through private fundraising. We did it because we knew that part of it, we believe that an essential part of an education is experiencing other cultures, other languages, other countries, and wanted to expand our international program. I think that that's great progress.
I'm going to jump in because I have a microphone already.
Uh-oh.
My name's Melissa Yeager, and I'm an assistant professor in the history department. We're going through a process at the moment of faculty-led academic enrichment, and we're encouraged to find all kinds of new tools to diversify our teaching. I wonder if you would comment on the utility and morality of torture as a teaching tool in the classroom.
Are you talking about, do you mean torturing the students? You know, I'm on record in a number of areas and locations, and on YouTube, if you want to look, about my views on torture, which I think, and I've said, is absolutely unacceptable in any circumstance, but I had not considered students.
Hello, my name is Naomi Johnson, and I teach in the Communication Studies and Theater Department. And I hope I'm not going to anger anyone, but I'm actually going to ask you 2 questions because I have the mic. So my first question is...
That's better. Today I was in a faculty group and they asked me an 8-part question.
Oh.
So 2 should be okay.
How about we'll call it 1A and 1B?
Okay.
All right, so 1A is... I know you already talked some about how you're used to working with citizens, but I guess I'd like to hear a little more specifically how you will adapt to making the transition from a largely military or from a military student body that is primarily male to a more majority female student body that is liberal arts. You know, what changes are you expecting and how will you adapt to that?
Okay, that's 1A?
That's 1A.
Okay.
And then 1B is, I would like to hear one thing that you've done to encourage faculty development at West Point that maybe would give us some insight into how you would develop faculty here at Longwood.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, 1A. First, let me talk to the issue of female students and female faculty before I talk about anything else. I'm married to Joan. We have 2 daughters, and every dog we've ever had is a female. I would tell you that one of the things that when I leave West Point, whenever that is, one of the things that I'm going to be very proudest of is that we have an alma mater that dates 100 years. And some of the words of that song talk about, we men of today, we salute you, you men of an earlier day. We've had women at the Military Academy since 1976, first graduating class in 1980. And we had never changed those words, which leaves a significant portion of our cadets and our graduates absolutely left out. And I spearheaded with some of my female colleagues working behind the scenes because they couldn't do it openly. If they did it openly, it looks like they have an agenda. But I trust them, believe in them. I consult with them on those kinds of issues. And I spearheaded the effort. And a year ago, over great consternation from some of our old graduates, we changed the words to the alma mater. Now, I'm going to tell you one other quick story here. I know we're running out of time, but I'm going to tell the story anyway. Every March, it's the Founders Day of Longwood. It's also the Founders Day of West Point in March. And every March, we go around the country. The leadership of West Point goes around the country and talks to various groups of West Point graduates to tell them about the state of the academy and to raise money and to do things like that. And so at all of these events, there is the guest speaker, me. There's usually the oldest graduate present who gives a rambling speech. And then they have the youngest graduate. Well, I went to one in Oklahoma City about 4 years ago. And the oldest graduate was from the class of 1951. And we were seated at the table together before dinner. And there was another graduate about his vintage, maybe even his classmate, who just kept trying to egg him on to say something negative about having women at the military academy. And he just kept trying to get him to go. And this oldest graduate was just having none of it. And finally he said one more thing to try and get him to say something negative. And this oldest graduate kind of drew himself up and said, "It's been my experience in life that women improve just about any part of it they're in." So I feel the same way, and I have evidence in my own family of that. Liberal arts. West Point's thought of as an engineering school. I'm sure that's the perception. We're an engineering school. We're the nation's first engineering school. Any engineering school in this country can trace its roots to West Point, and we're very proud of that heritage, but that's not what we are anymore. That's certainly not what we are exclusively. U.S. News and World Report said that we are the #1 public liberal arts college in the country. 50% of our graduates major in the humanities and 50% in math, science, and engineering. Now, I have to tell you that some of our old graduates are pretty heavily perturbed by the fact that we're named a #1 public liberal arts college. They don't like the word liberal. They don't particularly like the word arts. You put them together, and oh my God, what are you doing up there? So I really don't have any qualms in that area at all. Part 1B, faculty development. One of the things that we've done is as we've increased these overseas initiatives for cadets, is we have included faculty members in that. And in fact, we get additional funding so that on not all, but on several of the internships, faculty members go as well. And in fact, they make it a teaching experience in their classroom, and then they go from there and they go visit France for 3 weeks to bring to life what they taught in the classroom. And the faculty member then potentially has the opportunity to do some additional research while they're overseas as well. So that's one initiative. Oh, got one more over there.
Hi, I'm Angela Jackson, and I work for residential and commuter life. So we're going to go on the train of progress and diversity. How would you go about implementing a more diverse campus in our student body as well as within our faculty and staff?
Okay. I've had this discussion a couple of times today, and I'm going to tell you another little story that I will illustrate what I think about this. In many ways, West Point was founded on the idea of diversity. It was the diversity of its time, which is a little bit unusual, but West Point was founded in 1802. Thomas Jefferson was the president, and he was opposed to the idea of a national military academy because he had experience with the armies of Europe, particularly where it was an elite, aristocratic army that tended to either overthrow the government or try to, and was not part of the people. And what convinced him to change his mind and support the idea of a military academy was how the students were going to be selected. As I said, it was the diversity of its time. They were all white males, but they didn't come from any particular social class. It didn't matter who their parents were, and they were going to come from all over the country, and not just in the Northeast or anywhere like that. And so that was really one of the things that persuaded President Jefferson to establish West Point. Like, I think, most schools, we are trying to increase the diversity of our student body at the military academy as well. The demographics of this country are changing, and we have to recognize that, and we have to recognize the multiculturalism that we have and the diversity we have. One of my colleagues who's become a mentor to me on this had a great saying, and I don't know if he coined it, maybe someone else said it, but he said, diversity breeds diversity. So that if you bring in the right people, they become role models, they become aspirational for others, and so you have to start. I'll tell you this, if you don't pay attention to diversity at the very top, from the leadership, it falls away. It's something that that is easily ignored in the press of other things. So it has to be a priority to continually ask, what are we doing about diversity? What are we doing about it? Now, here's one thing that we've just recently done as we're looking at the future for the military academy is we've established a center for science, technology, and mathematics education, because that's what we need. We certainly need studying everywhere, but we're going to need that in the future. And the changing demographics of this country by the year 2050, if we continue on the path we are today, many people in that population will not be aspiring to be science, technology, math. So this center, we are targeting primarily at middle school, junior high school level, and at minority communities to get them interested in science and in math and in education. We certainly hope that some of those young folks decide to go to the military academy, but I hope a bunch of them decide to come to Longwood as well.